Okay. Hey, what's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where we discuss all of the comic book adaptations from your favorite comics into streaming shows and movies. And Brian, you want to tell everybody that Ninja Turtles actually were comics first, weren't they?
They were.
Yes. Have you and I ever discussed a Ninja Turtle show or movie on here? We
Not on
haven't,
our
right?
podcast, no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that. We've talked about stuff, or I've gone on to Mike Bongiorno's podcast, Pop Culture Man Children, and we talked about the Last Ronin. I know you're a
Yeah.
huge Last Ronin fan, right?
I was a Last Ronin fan, yeah.
Yes.
Although there's actually like a continuing series, and I'm not up to date on it. But yeah, I mean, that was a cultural phenomenon, like a little resurgence for the Turtles. I think a lot of
Yes.
people bought into that. It's a big deal. They're making a video game out of it, which I'm excited about too. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to spoil The Last Ronin, but it's certainly dark and it's very different from what we're talking about today, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And so, Brian, when did you end up seeing this movie?
I saw it last Saturday.
Oh, okay. So it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a couple days. Yep.
All right. Has it stuck with you? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, and in fact, I was like really surprised at the I think it came in fourth in the box office that weekend.
Really?
Which is crazy to me. I thought, the kind of stylistic similarities to Spider-Verse and all that. I thought it would do a little bit better, but like Barbie is still like the unkillable juggernaut.
Wow.
Unstoppable juggernaut, and and then the Meg like did really good, and Oppenheimer still too. So it came in fourth place at the weekend, which is crazy to me.
It just blew my mind because my wife, like a lot of times when I say I want to go see something or if I want to take the kids to go see something, she's like, well, what's the Rotten Tomatoes score, right? And for this, I think the Rotten Tomatoes score is like 94%.
Super high, yeah.
Right?
Super high. You know what, though, too? I referenced Spider-Verse here, and I have to keep thinking that, well, that was, again, highly rated. I keep thinking that it did better financially than it actually did. I think it made like $685 million, worldwide, which is actually less than the first one. But
yeah.
and there are other movies that Barbie is the big story this year. Obviously, that's the $1 billion movie along with Mario.
Yeah,
those are the two biggest movies of the year.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like you think you know how a movie's doing, and especially like I like to watch shows where they talk about box office results, like whether it's Mr. Sunday with the Weekly Planet or if it's Movie Bob. They kind of will give you an inside look into how movies are doing. And just the way that people talk on Twitter, for example, it seems like some of these movies are just smash hits, but it's really just that like people like us really love them.
Yeah, it's like a little bubble. You don't really see the outside world to it. I kind of look at it like one of the other big movies of the year was like the Fast and Furious franchise. Like that's a big deal to some people. I've never seen one of them, and it doesn't even go on my radar. So maybe this just because we think something's important to us, we expect it to resonate more with everybody else, and it doesn't.
Right, and even with that movie though, wasn't it that underperformed too?
I believe so, but I think it may. I mean, obviously, it made more than this so far because it's only been out, not even a week. So
yeah, it's crazy, right? Because the Turtles, like I said, they made it was like 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone seems to like it, and then the Meg, I think, got 0%. And you're saying that's really yes.
I didn't see that ranking there, but I still want to see that anyway because I don't know, the first one. Jason Statham punched the shark.
Yes. I am kind of looking like Jason Statham because my light is making my hair disappear. I mean, not that I have a lot of hair on my head. So I think for my vanity, I'm just going to turn off this light real quick. Hold on.
So what you also need to do is
good.
There you go.
Look at that full head of
I was gonna say maybe instead you should just talk in a British accent the rest of the review here, but
what might be like Grant Morrison? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
I have done that before. So anyway, let's actually talk about the Turtles because I am very excited about this movie. I just saw it last night with my daughter, Clementine. She thoroughly enjoyed it. It's interesting, like the creative team. I like to talk about the creative teams. You know this, that it has like two directors. It has a director and a co-director. The main director is Jeff Rowe, who did The Mitchells versus the Machines. And then he also did He was a writer on the show Gravity Falls and Disenchantment. Now, have you ever seen Disenchantment?
I watched a little of the first season, but I didn't keep up with it.
Okay, was it
The show was
good?
bad. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's it's medieval Simpsons, medieval fantasy Simpsons.
Okay, yeah.
Futurama, because I prefer Futurama.
Right. Disenchantment's on Netflix, right?
Yes, and it's actually ending too. The next season is going to be the last one.
Okay. Well, as I was watching this, it's funny because I feel like this. You mentioned how Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse are very similar stylistically to this. These movies feel so different from your typical animated features. Do you agree or no?
Yeah, I do. I still do think that it still does share a lot with Spider-Verse in particular. Maybe not with weird cosmic alternate reality kind of stuff, but just the heart being so centered around family and found family and all that. That I still feel that has to be like the biggest inspiration of this movie, to be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When they interviewed Jeff Rowe, he said that he wanted to focus on the teenage aspect of the Turtles, and he said that they used coming of age movies as their source of inspiration. So like in this movie, they have Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like literally on a screen, you're watching it. He also quoted other movies like Lady Bird, and I think I'm trying to think what the other one was. But I mean, the writers, Seth Rogen is one of the writers, but then also Evan Goldberg, that's his like partner that writes a lot of things with him. And they did Superbad, which that in itself is a coming of age story.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And then they also did, they did a bunch of things like Pineapple Express, This Is the End, The Interview. And then they did Good Boys. Have you seen that one?
I have not seen Good Boys, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So that once again is about like either like preteens or like teenage kids, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I think that Seth Rogen and Adam Goldberg really kind of have an idea of how to like represent like that coming of age, that youth kind of feeling.
Yeah. And especially important to note that, especially with Superbad, like those characters are them. Like,
right. Yeah, right. Are you a fan of that movie?
I love that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. They had like such a great run where it was like Knocked Up, 40-year-old virgin, Knocked Up, and then that. They're not all the same director, I don't think, but
yeah, some of those are Apatow, that group, yeah.
Yeah, but like it's like that Seth Rogen crew, and he sort of has brought over a lot of his co-stars from those projects and put them in this movie too.
Yeah.
So, what did you think about the whole idea of them like focusing on the teenage part? Like, there's all different versions of the Turtles. Did you find this refreshing? Did you find like it was like not exactly what you wanted?
No, I think it was great. I guess I was a little hesitant when they said it was a teenage focus. And then you heard Donnie's voice was a little young sounding, but which I ended up loving, honestly.
Yeah.
So like any complaint I had from trailers that I may or may not have said on this podcast, I feel were gone. Like I have no complaints. I think this was a nice change of pace from the Michael Bay movies, which I know you haven't seen.
Yes.
I just didn't enjoy them, honestly. My son did. I didn't. They're like watching those movies. I understand why people don't like Transformers movies.
Oh yeah.
And I totally get it. But the important part to this to me is that they got the family aspects right here, and that's always a big part of the Turtles like mythos, I guess. And it needs to be there. And they're younger, and they actually have a similar goal in this movie. I feel as the Bay, well, at least one of the Bay movies, where they just want to be accepted by people.
Mm-hmm.
They want to enter the real world, which is not something that is often touched upon in other versions. And God, there are a lot of versions.
There sure are. So there is the original Mirage comic, which is kind of dark and gritty. It was in black and white, right, when it first came out. And you have a couple of issues of that, right?
I have, a couple of old trades of that.
Yeah. I think we both have the same trade where it has that blonde sorceress woman that goes back in time.
Already, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or actually, she doesn't go like back in time. She goes from the past to the present day and gets the turtles.
Yep.
And there's that weird like
That's book 3.
what's that?
That's book 3.
Book 3, yes. Okay, so that was one of my first. That was my first introduction to the turtles as comic book characters, because I knew the turtles as the 1990 cartoon or 1989 cartoon, I think.
It might even be earlier than that, honestly. It might go back as far as 87 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, right. Because the live action movie is 1990.
90, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big deal. Did you see that in the theaters?
That was the first movie I ever saw in the theaters twice.
Oh, nice, man. That is awesome. How old were you?
1990, so I was 9, 10.
Nice. Okay, yeah. That movie had such an impact on me. I remember seeing it in the theater too. Just the poster for that movie was so iconic, of them just poking up their masks out of the manhole.
Yeah, I had that poster on my wall when I was a kid. Which I still did. And yeah, that was like one of my first favorite movies ever. I had a VHS of it. It was one of the first DVDs I bought. Actually, no, it wasn't. Never mind about that. I had the VHS of it. I still have it probably.
Yeah.
What do I have left? And yeah, I watched that movie all the time. And I loved, that was one of the first times where like I saw something and then went and bought a comic and I was like, holy crap, like this is, I mean, it's different, but it's what happens in the movie sort of. And I was, seeing adaptation really was one of the first times I realized what that meant.
Yes, right, exactly. Really good point. And so I think that at this point we can start talking spoilers. I kind of want to go into the story a little bit, but when you talk about adaptations, the very beginning of this movie kind of feels more in line with those early Turtles comics. Like it feels kind of gritty and intense. The very first scene of this movie.
Yes, the first scene with Baxter Stockman, who's experimenting with the ooze.
Yeah.
And trying to create a family because he feels rejected by the world.
Yeah.
And his first creation is a fly, which is appropriate because Baxter Stockman flies.
Right.
And it was interesting to I had wondered previously why there was a giant fly and why it was called Superfly and it wasn't called Baxter Stockman. And then you hear Ice-T's voice like, wait a minute. That doesn't check out. Ice-T is not the first person I would think of when I think Baxter Stockman.
Right.
So, and Giancarlo Esposito plays him here for a brief few moments. But yeah, it's a pretty little tragic scene there. Those soldiers come in, they destroy his lab, they want to take his research at the behest of Cynthia Utrom, who, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Krang.
Yeah.
Or the Utroms, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And then it's there's some death there. My son actually said like I'm surprised that they showed that in a kids movie, or they at least implied it in a kids movie.
That Baxter Stockman died.
Well, yeah, no, just some of those soldiers died, all that, like that, like there was that, and there's another scene later where Superfly actually like kills some people. Like he was very surprised that was in a kids movie, and he also said he wished he could have seen it. So there's a flip side to that too.
Oh, I love it. This is that kid that saw Alien versus Predator Requiem. So perfect. Yes. Right. So it's funny, right? Because I took my 7-year-old daughter Clementine to go see it, and I was a little bit worried if there were going to be scenes like this and if it would kind of give her nightmares, because it is intense, like you said. It's ambiguous whether Baxter Stockman died, but I think they left it that way so that he could come back in a sequel.
Yeah.
And then as far as I know, there's at least one mid-credit scene, but there isn't any kind of like post-credit scene or mid-credit scene with that Cynthia Utrom, right?
Yes, she's in the scene. Yeah, so it's them. The mid-credit scene was they were examining the research left over from that Superfly collected from Baxter.
Yeah,
and they're trying to replicate it, and they're trying to capture the turtles now, and they're sending the Shredder to do it.
Oh, wow. They tied a lot in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Was there any kind of suggestion that she was like a suit, like Krang's body?
No. Just, I mean, it, but I mean, no.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of the things that you said at the very beginning of this episode was that this movie's kind of different from the other Turtles movies or the other versions. There's so many different versions, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times there'll be major differences, especially like with April O'Neil. She'll be significantly different. But then there's a lot of times there's a difference with their like origin and whether or not they're connected to any kind of like ninja clan or not. And to me, when I was watching this, it felt kind of like the ultimate version of the Ninja Turtles. Now, you know what I'm talking about, but other people might be like, what the fuck does he mean? But it's like kind of like the ultimate universe of Marvel Comics was essentially like a modern telling of the Marvel universe. So you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it kind of it changes how they're associated with martial arts and doesn't associate it with any previous ninja clans so far.
Yeah.
Which and you said too how this is different. I actually think there's a lot of similarities between this and Rise of the TMNT as well. The more recent animated show that was only from a few years ago.
So you're a fan of that one, right?
I'm a fan of most of it. You know what? I couldn't. I had a real hard time with the 2011 series, which is the one that was when they first started being on Nickelodeon. So that's the 3D animated one.
That's the fucking the one that's on Netflix right now. That's like the big one on there.
Is it?
Where it's like starts at like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You don't like that one?
No, it's because I don't like these 3D animated shows because I'm so disappointed that the backgrounds are so empty all the time, and it's just like it's just these characters. That's all you're gonna get. If there's a featured character, that's all you're gonna get. There's nothing hidden in the background or anything like that. And they can do a lot with storytelling and character development and all that. But I like when the worlds feel full. You know, I like when they feel lived in and they don't feel artificial and all that. And that's the vibe I get out of the shows like that. That's why I haven't really watched the Star Wars shows either, because I get that same vibe, honestly. And Transformers Prime too. I've seen a bunch of episodes of that, probably more than any of the other shows I mentioned. But ultimately, like I like the worlds that there's just a lot going on in. I feel 2D animation lends itself better to what I like.
You know what? I think that's actually a really excellent point, and I guess that's probably one of the reasons why you like this movie, because it is like CGI that they use, but they sort of like draw over it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it feels the world feels lived in and realistic, you know. You know, the in the end of the movie, it's the Staten Island Zoo, you know.
Yes,
I pointed out that one of the pizzerias looks exactly like L&B Pizza in Brooklyn.
Oh,
it doesn't say that, but that's clearly it.
Yeah. I know. I got so excited when they mentioned Staten Island. I was like, yes, that's where the mutants would go, you know?
Yeah.
But let's keep spinning with this whole different versions of the Turtles. Okay, so you don't like the 2011 version.
I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I don't have as much of an affinity for it as I do for the other series. Like I really love the 03 version too. Like that was the one that was on Fox. That was 2D animated, and it was a little grittier, than and violent than the original cartoon.
Yeah,
which if you go back and watch now is like really feels like a little kid's show. But the 03 one stayed pretty close to comics, and I really enjoyed that one overall.
Okay, I have not seen that one. I think my daughter has like a book that's based on that version, but that's about it.
It's actually been really hard to get.
Yeah.
It hasn't been in print for the longest time, but very soon I believe they're releasing a full DVD version of it, which I absolutely plan on buying.
Nice. Okay, awesome, man. Well, so then let's talk about the comics of Turtles. Okay, so we already kind of talked about the Mirage version that was the original like Eastman and Laird comics and our kind of limited experience with them. And then did you buy any of the Archie Ninja Turtles comics?
Yeah, I had some of the Archie books too. Yeah, not as many as the originals, but yes, I definitely had them. Okay. Very much more in the range of the animated show.
Yes.
Original animated show.
Right. And so when I was on Mike Bongiorno's podcast, Pop Culture Man Children, we were talking about Turtles toys and we were talking about comics. And I don't think he really knew about the Archie comic. And so, like, to me, that was a big milestone for me, because what was interesting about the Archie comic and then later on in the IDW comics was that they would showcase all these characters that were just toys. And you wouldn't always get those characters in the cartoons.
Yeah, and if you did, it was very sparingly.
Right. So like characters that are in this movie, they fleshed out in those comics, those Archie comics, like Wingnut. But it was like a duo. It was like Wingnut and Screw Loose,
Yeah.
and a little mosquito, right? And then Leatherhead is pretty much in every animated version of the Turtles. But the weird thing is, like, it's fucking Rose Byrne in this version.
Yeah, there were some interesting choices, but I mean, I enjoyed everything there. I don't think too many of the mutants added too much,
Right.
Other than kind of like background character status,
Right.
Although I have to say that I laughed at everything Paul Rudd said, which I probably said in the trailer about the trailer as well.
Yeah. Well, he's a freaking gem, and anytime you pair him up with Seth Rogen in a project,
Yeah.
you're gonna get gold. And we'll definitely talk more about the other mutants too in a minute. But I just really liked all the random toys. Like sometimes when you go to like Toys R Us or whatever store back then, like Kmart or Bradley's, whatever the fuck, they would just have random figures that people weren't interested in besides the Turtles. And you'd get some kind of weird ass figure like Genghis Frog, or the cockroach one, Scumbug.
Yeah.
And as a kid that didn't have a lot of money, I would be super excited whenever I'd get one of those. And then they're in this fucking movie and they're voiced by like, like the woman from like fucking What We Do in the Shadows. Yeah. So I like the Archie comics a lot, but then I wanted to ask you if you liked the IDW comics, or have you read a lot of the
Yeah, I read probably the first 30 to 40 issues or so.
Okay.
Well, maybe it's more than that. I don't know. I bought a bunch of bundles of those on Comixology back in the day, and I read them all through.
Yeah.
And I think there was like a brief time where I stopped buying comics completely for money reasons or whatever, and I just never really picked it back up again. But funnily enough, my son bought a Turtles comic today from IDW. So
nice. Which one?
Just the main book. He bought the most recent issue, which is up to 141, which is crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty close to that. I get the trades from the library, and so I've read like pretty much all the trades. I really like the IDW comics a lot, and they capture that essence of these extra mutant characters, the characters besides the Turtles, and what's going on with them. And that's sort of like a continuation from the Archie stuff, where it's like you're going to focus on Mondo Gecko and Ray Fillet. Right, like all these characters, and I think that's what they were really going with this movie. I know that the director was saying that for him, they were really inspired by the toys, and that I think that's why they have all these weird characters in this movie.
And speaking of toys, if you've never looked at, there's tons of companies that produce Turtles toys. There's still the original Playmates; they still make plenty of Turtle toys,
nice,
including movie figures. But then there's NECA and Super 7, and both of them produce fantastic versions of these characters, especially the NECA ones. They're like old cartoon accurate, and they have all those crazy characters. They have Wingnut and Screw Loose. They have Dirtbag, and they have
Dirtbag, Ace Duck.
Yeah, they have Ace McQuack. Is it?
I thought it was Ace Duck, but it's probably Ace McQuack.
Yeah, he's got like the pilot hat and the leather jacket. Yeah.
He's probably Ace Duck, because if it was like Ace McQuack, it would be like a DuckTales thing, right?
That's probably what I'm messing up there. But yeah, if you can think of a character, they probably made it, and it looks exactly like the cartoon.
Oh shit! Okay, all right. Well, that's awesome. I wish I had like $600 so I could buy like 3 of them.
Yeah, they are. They're a little pricey.
Yeah, I saw you looking over at your shelf over there. You have some over there?
I have some. Yeah, I have a Krang from the cards. I have Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh yes.
I have Krang, a Foot Soldier.
Oh,
and yes. I have Bebop and Rocksteady. I have to get every Bebop and Rocksteady I find. I love them.
Oh, I love Bebop and Rocksteady. And you know what? We're going to talk about them and the mutants in 1 second, but I just kept wanting to talk about the differences. So with IDW, the IDW's main addition to the lore was, and you know this from reading the comics, is that the Turtles were a family of humans at one point in like feudal Japan, and they were a part of the Foot Clan. Splinter was a member of the Foot Clan, and they were noble. But then Uroku Saki, Shredder, killed him, and they had the whole family killed. And then the Turtles were essentially reincarnated as the animals that got mutated. And I've always liked that version. Like when we talk about Splinter's origin, right? Because Splinter's origin changes more. The Turtles' origin is pretty much the same always, but Splinter's origin changes. Sometimes he's an actual rat that's like watching a human, and he's trained by that human. Other times he's a human that gets mutated into a rat person.
Yeah, Hamato Yoshi. Yep.
Hamato Yoshi, right. And I think it always works better for me when he is a human first, and then he has that blood feud with the Shredder. What about you?
I do like that a lot. Although I mean, I think still to this day, my favorite incarnation is that 1990 movie where it's the opposite.
Right, where it's just a turtle in a cage. I mean, not a turtle, a rat in a cage.
Rat who finds a ninjutsu book.
Right. Well, he's like watching the guy, right? He's like, they show him like practicing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. No, you're right. He was watching. Yes, he was watching him. He was his like pet. Yes, I'm sorry. I got that wrong.
It's okay. There's so many different versions of Splinter, and so yet again, this version of Splinter is different as well. And Jackie Chan, I said this in our notes, that I feel like Jackie Chan's version of Splinter is the standout character for this movie. I feel like the movie, it's really about his arc.
Yeah, and how it mirrors Superfly. Yeah, I think that's a really good observation.
Yeah, and so this version of Splinter, essentially, he's a rat, and he's not accepted as even a rat before he gets mutated. Everyone is hostile to him. Other animals, humans are hostile to him.
Except the cockroach.
Except the cockroach, but then the cockroach gets stepped on. Did you hear him say he ate him too?
I think he did say that, yeah.
Yeah, it's fucked up, right? So he eventually gets mutated after he finds the turtles in the ooze, and they have this bonding moment because the turtles are kind to him as babies. And it's this real funny moment, but it leads up to what I think is probably the most emotionally compelling scene of the film, where he does decide to bring the turtles up to the surface because they want to see the surface. And when he brings them up there, they're immediately attacked as if they're freaks, and he's worried about that. Michelangelo almost gets run over. What do you think of that scene?
Oh yeah, that's like trauma inducing. Yeah, it was a perfect way to show it up and show why he feels that way, why he's so adamant about staying in the shadows, because they don't. I mean, they always, in previous incarnations, they always talk about how they wouldn't be accepted because they're different looking like that, but they really accentuated that here and made that a major focus. And then it's just about how you go about it, versus Splinter's way and why he changes it, and how Superfly does it with his own family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so you remember in the Marvel comics when we were kids, there'd be an ad for it, and there'd be an ad in the back that had X-Men cards, and the ad said, "This shows that why not everyone's favorite mutants are turtles, or the people's favorite mutants ain't turtles." Do you remember that ad?
Yeah.
I think it had like Wolverine's claw in it too.
It had to have had Wolverine.
Right. And so like the idea of mutants as like outcasts, you get it in the IDW comic, but for most other incarnations of the turtles, you don't really get the whole sense of all the turtles are outcasts. A lot of times you'll have like Raphael, who kind of wears like a trench coat and he wants to try to like sneak into society, or maybe like Michelangelo wants to make some friends. But for the most part, it's not like everybody's an outcast because they're a mutant. But that's like the focus of this whole fucking movie.
Yeah. They took it to that different level. Like they're always separate from society, and they do feel they would be outcasts, but they actually showed them being outcasts here, which is the difference.
Yeah. And so that scene is great. And then Splinter essentially just watches a bunch of martial arts movies, and he trains the turtles that way. And do you think it's interesting, because like going along with that idea that the Ultimate Comics version of Turtles, don't you think it's interesting that they're not these like amazing ninjas like they are in pretty much every other version?
I think they kind of are, but they are a little bit younger and clumsier. I think there's that first scene where they get into a fight with those guys and they steal April's bike.
Yeah.
Donnie gets stabbed with something. I don't know if it was a Psy or a Ninja Star or whatever, but yeah, they're like,
yeah, it's Raph Psy.
Yeah, but yeah, it just shows that they haven't been in a real fight yet, and I think they kind of come into it as even in the montage scene where they're taking down all those crime crews.
Yeah.
And they seem to be a lot more adept there.
Yeah, and even that shit's really funny where they're like Toupee Tony and this is normal Nick or whatever. I loved all that. So let's talk about each of the individual turtles, right? I want to get your opinion on each of the four main turtles. Or
Sure.
There's only four fucking turtles.
I like them all, I guess. They kind of stick to the the normal expected archetypes. Leo's the leader, Donatello is the brains, Raph is a little stronger and angrier, and Michelangelo is he's kind of branched more into being a comedian than the party dude, I'd say. But Ultimately, they all feel very similar to how they've been portrayed in the past.
See, I think they're similar, but I do think there are some pretty big differences. First of all, with Donatello, usually Michelangelo is the youngest seeming out of all of them, right? Because he's kind of immature and wild and goofy. Donatello, just because of his voice and his stature and stuff, he seems like he's the youngest out of all of them.
Yes, he definitely does this time. Yeah. And I don't think Michelangelo is usually depicted as the youngest, or emotionally or age wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree that honestly, I felt that Donatello felt a lot more like, I did growing up watching nerdy shows, and references Attack on Titan and Avengers and all that. And
right. So, I mean, okay, so it's, to me, it didn't seem like he was like that sort of that technical expert like he is in pretty much everything else, where he's always making things with technology. It seemed more like he was like a nerdy guy that was into like nerd culture.
I think he still kind of dabbles in that kind of engineering stuff, but it definitely seems a little more subdued. Like, and I've talking about the rise of the TMNT show. Like, he's like a ridiculous mega genius there, and he's very arrogant about it, and in a funny way.
Yeah.
But he kind of whips up stuff almost like Forge would, sort of.
Right.
But it seems a lot more grounded in this, I think. Because you can tell that the technology they are using, that he probably has some hand in hacking it or adapting it for them to be able to use without having to pay for it or some shit.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of brings up a little side thing too. Another way that they were like really realistic as teenagers is that when they're all like laying in their bunks, they're all like on screens looking at stuff. Like, I feel like that's such a realistic version of teenagers versus what we often get with Ninja Turtles adaptations.
Yeah.
And then like, there's one part where they're like, "Oh, Dad's texting us. Do you think he forgot the Roku password or something?" Like, just the fact that they like live in the sewer, but they all have cell phones. For some reason, Michelangelo has braces. It's like, okay, little suspension of disbelief, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
For Mikey, I felt like he was like the least Michelangelo of any incarnation, because usually Michelangelo's like real silly and in your face, and I felt like he was just, he was fun, but he wasn't like goofy over the top.
Yeah, again, a little more subdued and grounded, I guess.
Yeah.
In the same vein as Donatello. I do agree with that. He seems more to be more being an entertainer than a party person, I guess. We always think of the theme song where Michelangelo party dude. Yeah. But yeah, he wants to join the comedy improv team, and he wants things like that. And that's sort of in line with past versions. I would say that has some kinship with the Bay movies and that version.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen those, but yeah, I'm guessing. Okay. Well, so then Raphael is crude but rude. Right. Isn't that what they fucking say?
Cool but rude.
Cool but rude. There you go. Yeah, he could be crude and rude, because that's like the same thing. Okay, but anyway, this version of Raphael, I feel like he is the happiest or nicest version of Raphael. He talks a lot about like having rage, and he talks about doing violent things, but he's often like smiling. Like the other versions of Raphael, especially that 1990 version, like they're always like being mean to the other turtles and like having a real attitude.
Yeah. Again, this Raph, very similar to the Rise version of Raph. He's a bit bigger than the other turtles, and he is not exactly angry in the other ones, but he's a lot nicer about it, and he's actually more of the leader in that show than Leonardo is. There's a little bit of a role reversal in that series, but it's more of I don't want to say a jock, because I don't think that's the right stereotype, but it's a little more in that direction, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Like in the end, you see him join in the end of the movie. You see him join the wrestling team. Like that. That's exactly what I would expect.
Yeah,
that's on brand for this version, I think.
Yeah, he's like aggressive. He talks about having rage. He's aggressive, but he's not really like mean spirited.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. So then, we've kind of talked about how Splinter's different and the Turtles are different. April O'Neil. There's a big controversy over April O'Neil because we live in a stupid fucking society. It's like, oh my God, she's black. Oh my God, she's unattractive, right? Because she doesn't have like a supermodel body. She's unattractive, and it's just so fucking stupid. On Mike Bongiorno's show, we talked about how like the original version of April O'Neil, you can't necessarily tell what ethnicity she is because it's a black and white comic, but it's implied that April is African American in the original comic.
I don't. I'm not sure about that, but I always after seeing it, I would make that assumption, but I don't know how true that is. I feel like I need to research that, but I'm not sure.
Well, because Mike was saying that she's modeled on either Eastman or Laird's girlfriend, and she was an African American woman.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you look at the hair, especially, and it definitely does lean that way.
Yeah.
But I haven't read specifically that that's official. I guess is what I'm.
Yeah. The only time I ever heard of that was from Mike. And the thing is, at the end of this movie, there's a part where April has like taken over the newscast, and there's another reporter, and the other reporter almost looks like an older version of her, with glasses.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So there's an older version. It's a woman that looks like it could almost be that April from the comic. And so I'm just wondering if that's like an homage to.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And then one thing, so I don't forget too, at the very end of the movie, Splinter gets knocked down, and it's kind of like the darkest moment. And then a human comes and helps him. The voice of that human is Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
cool. in terms of April and her design. Again, I want to cite Rise of the TMNT. She's also a young black girl in that, African American in that as well. And I think that same division was there back then. I think both versions are great, and I think in terms of the body type, I think everybody's body type is just like that in this universe. I don't, I think it would look weird if she looked like a supermodel at this point.
Totally agree.
Everybody kind of looks a little weird and cartoonish and stylized, so. I think it works perfectly. I thought April was really great. I do agree with you. I saw your notes about her vomiting was hysterical.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was the funniest fucking part of the whole movie when she throws up,
Yeah, especially the second time.
Yeah. So good. I mean, it's a legitimately funny movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
And also with my notes, you appreciate the fact that she is like a teenager like the Turtles too?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no notes. No issues with this movie whatsoever.
Good job, Seth Rogen and the three other guys that made this movie.
Make more comics, please.
Yes.
More comic adaptations.
Because I personally like it that she's a teenager too, because it kind of puts her in the same boat as the Turtles. She has her own little arc, which is great. She has to kind of make up for the fact that she threw up on the school news show. I love that. And also, when you think about it, it's kind of weird to have this like 20-something-year-old woman or this 30-something-year-old woman like living with these teenage mutants, Yeah,
well, I think in that sense, they're always called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're not often presented as teenagers. I think they present as a lot older than that. So it never seemed weird. But like, if you would have had these characters and an April that looked more like the old cartoon, that would have been really weird, I think. Especially with the implied, romantic attraction that Leonardo had to her in this, which is also a funny thing to me. It's, they kind of, depending on the series, there's always somebody different that's like interested in April in that way,
Right.
I would say it's probably Michelangelo in the Bay movies. It's Donatello in that 2011 one.
It is.
I don't know if anybody is in the live action movies in the 90s, I would say maybe Raph, but not really, I guess.
Yeah, but then of course you have like the romance with Casey Jones and April in that, and then that continues into other versions too, like the TMNT version. That movie. We haven't really talked about that movie at all, but
I love that movie too. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, exactly. So, and in that version, and in the 2011 version, April is younger too. She's like a kid in the 2011 version too. Yeah. All right, so we covered the main people. Now let's get into these mutants. You said before that, like,
we didn't talk about Leo at all.
Okay.
There's not much to say, really. He's the typical leader. He does feel like more of a main character here, I think. I think if I had to pick one that got a little more focus, it's definitely him. And again, similarity with Rise of the TMNT. Like, I feel like he got a little bit of a spotlight there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's because he's into April that they essentially get roped into this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that's attracted to April this time around. Like it's Donatello, like you said, or Michelangelo. This time it's him. Yeah. And that's kind of just guiding their actions. So, yeah, I thought he was great in this, too. All the kids, because they had all kids voice all the Turtles, I thought they all did a great job, too.
Yep. All great.
So with the other mutants, I think you said this before, but this is in my notes too, where it's like they don't necessarily bring a lot. Like I don't even think that they have distinct funny lines besides maybe like what like Mondo Gecko says.
Yeah, yeah, they might have some lines, and I think they're all aimed to be humorous or just very kind of just matter of fact, sort of on the side. They're not, for the most part, not delivering any relevant plot information or anything like that. They're just kind of there for building purposes, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that this would have worked if there was less mutants? Like if there was like maybe just like 4 other mutants
No,
instead?
I always want more characters.
More yeah, that's the whole Transformers thing, right?
That's my whole Transformers thing. More characters, just that's what I want.
Yeah, I think you might be right. In my notes I was saying that maybe it would have been better if there was like less and like we focused more on them, that gave them more personality, more lines.
Yeah,
but
I mean, sorry, you finish.
Well, no, it's just that from our childhood, these toys, that's the appeal, is like looking at the back of the box and just seeing all these other fucking characters that you can pick. Yeah. And just being excited. And that's what this movie is. It's just like, oh, there's this one, and then there's a cockroach one, there's an alligator one, it's exciting.
As much as if I had to remove anybody out of the whole little mutant crew there, I as much as I love Bebop and Rocksteady, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like they don't fit there. Like I so associate them with being evil henchmen,
Right.
So it's weird. It's weird to see them as protagonists or like the good guy side,
Right. And they end up in the fucking sewer with the rest of the mutants at the end.
Yeah. That was a little weird. I mean, I know most of all those other characters are villainous too. Every single one of them. Not every single one. Genghis wasn't, and I don't think Mondo Gecko was either.
No, Mondo Gecko is not usually bad. But in the comics, in the IDW comics, there's the team of the Mutanimals, right? Or Mutanimals. And that's going all the way back to the Archie comics. And they are usually sided with Old Hob, who's like this cat in the IDW comics. And they can be kind of villainous, Going with your point of Bebop and Rocksteady, there's so many different versions of them, too, because they're like main turtle characters. And my favorite versions of Bebop and Rocksteady are not like the goofy idiot versions of them, but like where they're like scary. Like in the IDW comics, they're actually very scary. Like
they're very scary in that.
Yeah, like one of them has like
they do some real damage to Donatello at some point, don't they?
They pretty much like kill Donatello. He's like just barely alive in the comics. And in this, they're kind of intimidating, but there's nothing more to them. That they're just sort of like side characters, ancillary characters.
They're filling the same role they did in the original show, essentially, but just on a different side, I guess, Yeah,
exactly. So I personally think that like Ice Cube as Superfly is another standout character, just like Splinter.
Yeah, was fantastic. And again, the mirror of those two characters was so integral to me loving this movie.
Yeah, it's great because he does this great job of having a balance between like being funny and being intimidating.
Yeah.
He's scary. You don't want him to figure out that the turtles are actually going to betray him, because then you're like, oh shit, he's going to hurt them.
Yeah. And again, they had that kind of thing where it's like the way he was talking at first, it was like, oh, wow, maybe this isn't so bad. And then they have him kind of do the unspeakable action to make him like, oh no, villain, bad guy.
Yeah, that's yet another really funny part of the movie where they're like, I don't know, we could do baby dropping or something. Like, remember they said all these crazy fucking things they would do?
Yeah.
I love that part. But yeah, it's like that Marvel thing, right? Where it's like, oh wait, we relate to the character, but then they went too far.
Yeah.
Did you see the most recent Honest trailer with the Secret Invasion?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. After we're done, if you want to check it out, they actually make a whole joke about that exact thing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, man. So tell me, before we kind of wrap this up, what scenes did you really like? Like, what made this a good movie for you?
Really the whole thing. Like the family stuff is always key to me. Mm-hmm. There was a good conflict, I think. Having a villain that had similar ideals and intentions, but with a different way of doing it is always a good thing to me. Just the fact that they're inexplicably tied to New York, which is where we're from and are so familiar with too. The art style, the voice, everything. I really enjoy this movie a lot.
Yeah, ditto. I pretty much feel the exact same way as you. I'm kind of surprised it's not doing as well as I had been led to believe. Everyone seemed to love it online. The fact that it had like 94%, I think I set the bar kind of high for my expectations, but it pretty much like came almost up to that point.
Yeah.
You know, and another funny thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up, but like all the times they reference being milked. I think that was really funny.
Okay. So it was funny. It was totally funny. Maybe they just did it a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Like a little bit. Like they could have like rolled that back maybe 20%. Mention it, you know, and it would have been a lot funnier overall.
Right, because they do mention it like 18 times in the movie.
Yeah, it was like a little bit too many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long complaint.
So are you able to do a ranking or no?
Yeah, I can do a ranking. I can include whatever you don't want to include.
Okay. So when Brian and I were talking about this, I mentioned how I haven't seen the Bay films, and I thought that we should just stick to movies that got theatrical releases. There's like a Ninja Turtles meet Batman movie, and there's like the Rise of the Ninja Turtles movie too, right? But
it's also fantastic, honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna maybe check it out because if you're saying that, I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
But so that basically leaves us with the 3 live action movies from the early 90s. It leaves us with TMNT, and then this movie. Right, I don't think I'm forgetting anything there.
Well,
so
I'm gonna throw in the Bay movies because I saw them, and you know, it doesn't put the criteria here. You can obviously leave them out if you need to.
Yeah, please. So how about I'll go first then, since you know you have the Bay movies to add too. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So for my rankings, out of all the movies, I'm gonna go from least favorite to most favorite. So my least favorite one is The Secret of the Ooze from 1991. That's my least favorite.
What?
Are you okay over there? Wow. What, you love Secret of the Ooze?
I kind of do.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, wow, that's a surprise. I mean, I was fully expecting to hear the third one.
Okay, I got a point for that.
Okay.
The third one is my number 4. So there's 5 movies on my list.
Okay.
Number 4 is the third one. The reason why I like the third one better is because the way that Secret of the Ooze gets resolved is that the Shredder takes the ooze, becomes a super Shredder, and then essentially just destroys himself. Which even as a kid, I was like, I think this is pretty dumb. And then
Shredder's iconic.
I know he's iconic, but he just kills himself.
Fair.
And then Toka and Razor are essentially Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah, but that's a legal issue. Like they couldn't legally get the rights to use those characters because they're created for the cartoon and not the comics, and these are more associated with that.
Right. I know, but like, regardless of whether it's actually Bebop and Rocksteady or Toka and Razor, I just think the way that Toka and Razor are used, they're not like intimidating. They are intimidating. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, they're intimidating in the sense that they're very strong, but I mean, they're babies. That's like my favorite line in any of these movies.
Oh, Jesus Christ. He's going to rank The Secret of the Ooze as number 1. I'm scared.
No, I'm not. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. But I'm very surprised to hear it below number 3.
Okay. Well, I feel like I know what your number 1 is going to be. So 5 is Secret of the Ooze. 4 is the third one, which sometimes has the subtitle of Turtles in Time. 3.
Wait, what? I've never heard that. Turtles in Time is the video game.
No, I understand that. I know that. But I think that I've seen like DVDs and stuff on in Walmart where it says Turtles in Time, but maybe that's not like an official subtitle. Maybe they just put it on there to make it more marketable.
Okay.
Anyway, 3, and I have some reluctance saying this. 3 is TMNT. Like with these 3 movies, there was multiple times where I was like, any one of these could be number 1. But 3 was TMNT from 2007, and then 2 was this Mutant Mayhem movie. And then number 1 was the 1990s live action movie.
Yeah, mine is not different than yours, really, except for that one major omission there. That's like, to me, that's like me saying ranking Black Panther low for you, you know? Like, that's what that felt like to me.
I understand.
So
I understand.
again, I'm including the Bay movies, which I did not like. So they're at the bottom. So the second
Really?
one, Out of the Shadows, is at the bottom, and the first Bay movie from 2014 is below that.
Wow.
Then I have Turtles 3.
Yeah.
Then I have Secret of the Ooze,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
do love. So we just really reversed them one slot essentially.
Yeah.
But I love that movie. Then I also have TMNT. I love that movie too. And then I put Mutant Mayhem as 2. And the 90 movie is the pinnacle to me. That's what got me kind of back into buying turtle figures, which I was kind of adamant about a while. Is like they released a set of them, and that's what I always wanted. The movie toys from back when that movie was out were awful, and the ones now they look exactly like the movie, and it's fantastic. But that movie is a huge part of my childhood and growing up, and it's still. I don't think it could be topped to me, no matter how good something is. I don't think the nostalgia there is going to add some factor there. Just to throw out the other things, I have seen all the other movies too. So, there's Turtles Forever, which is the kind of the finale of the 03 series, where they kind of come into contact with the original cartoon Turtles and black and white comic versions too. That's also pretty fantastic. The Rise of the TMNT movie, which I actually watched today. I've never seen it before. It is fantastic. I put it very, very close to Mutant Mayhem, honestly. It's that good.
Wow. Okay.
So if you haven't watched it, I really recommend it. And then Batman vs. TMNT is really great too. It's one of Turtles crossover with just about everybody in comics these days. Power Rangers, they've done Batman. They're doing Street Fighter right now and Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably forgetting something too, but they are everywhere. There's even a toy series of them versus Cobra Kai. So
Cobra Kai, yes.
So where was I going with that? I forgot.
How they cross over with Batman.
Crossovers. Oh, Batman vs. TMNT. It's a pretty damn good comic, honestly. There's 3 of them. I've only read two volumes of it, but it's fun.
That reminds me of a thing that you forgot as far as them crossing over. Power Rangers.
That was the first one I said.
I'm an asshole. Okay, never mind.
You make versions of those too.
Oh man. I love Turtles. I love Power Rangers too. And I've actually really loved talking about this with you because it seems like your passion for Ninja Turtles, it's not as high as your passion for Transformers, but holy shit, you know what you're talking about.
It's funny because growing up, Turtles was, I think, my biggest phase. It was He-Man, it was then Transformers, then Turtles, and then I would say Star Wars in the late 90s when the movies came back.
Yep.
But Turtles was I remember a lot more of that than I do anything else from being a kid.
Right.
And really the funny thing about Transformers and my love of Transformers is that me running into a random set of toys in there, and it's really from a throwaway comment from my dad about the movie. Like he just randomly said it one day. He's like, that was actually a pretty good movie. And I'm like, yeah, it was a really good movie. And I had watched it 1,000 times. I had it on we put in like a bootleg copy out of a rental, and I watched it a billion times. But I had more turtle toys than I had Transformers when I was a kid, which is probably shocking.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. No, I understand though. I understand because it's like right at the time the Turtles came out. It's like that perfect time for us.
I remember the first time I found an actual turtle figure in a Toys R Us. There was a freaking wall, like a giant wall of all figures, and it was all Shredder and Splinter. And I looked behind every freaking thing, and I found one Raphael. And I remember the joy of that moment still to this day.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like getting Casey Jones is a big deal for me like that.
Yeah.
And then I just want to bring this up. It's not really connected to any of the other stuff we were saying, but when I was a kid, I lived in the same house as my cousins, and there's 2 boy cousins and a girl. And me and the 2 boy cousins who were younger than me, we would be really into Ninja Turtles. They had a lot more of the figures than I did. But my uncle, who was a firefighter and then he became a carpenter, he like made turtle weapons for us to where we had like swords and nunchucks and stuff, right? And I remember like there'd be times, at least once, but I think multiple times, he was a bald dude, but he would wear bandanas a lot. And he put his bandana in front of his face like this, and he pretended to be the shredder, and we'd all attack him, and he'd like sweep us our legs and shit, you know?
Yeah.
Great times, man.
I have two embarrassing things. Well, one's not so embarrassing. I was a Ninja Turtle for Halloween 3 times in my youth.
Yeah.
I wasn't Donatello. I was Raphael, Leonardo, and Michelangelo at various points. I don't remember the order. And this is super embarrassing, and I feel guilt about this to this day. I was so obsessed with Ninja Turtles. My dad had a van. He drove around in a van. That was his car, was a van, because he did lots of like side work, handyman stuff on the side. Yeah. And my grandfather, who was to me like a great artist, he painted Leonardo on the side of the van to make it a turtle van. And my dad drove around it. God bless him. For years, and like I'm like thinking like, oh God, that's so horrible. Why was I okay with this like back then? Why was this exciting? No, this is so embarrassing.
Holy shit, that is love, man.
I will try and find a picture of that, and maybe we can use that as a background for our next review or something like that, because one has to exist somewhere.
That is a loving father. Holy shit, you better say that at his funeral. When he's
that 100% that will be said.
Awesome. Wow. Holy shit. So as you guys can see, we really love the Turtles. We have a great nostalgia for them. Coming up, I think next week we have Blue Beetle, right?
Yeah. Blue Beetle's next.
Blue Beetle. I know they're kind of.
Oh no, because it's the end of next week, so we technically don't have anything next week.
Okay. Off screen, we'll talk about what we're going to do. But Blue Beetle's coming up. We have other things on the horizon like Ahsoka. So we can talk about those things too. We hope that you guys enjoyed our Turtles discussion. Let us know who your favorite turtle is and also where you would rank Mutant Mayhem on your list of turtle movies.
Wait, who's your favorite turtle? Who's your favorite turtle? We need to tell them before we ask them.
Michelangelo for me.
Okay, that's my son's favorite, and mine is Leonardo. So
yeah, me and Clementine are the same. We both like Michelangelo, but she also likes.
One more embarrassing turtle moment.
Oh, here we go.
When I announced the birth of my son, we photoshopped a player select screen of the Ninja Turtle arcade game. So I was player 1, and then Kristen was player 2, and my dog was player 3, and then Brandon was coming soon. Insert coin soon was Brandon.
I see.
That was how we announced to the world that we were having a child.
I don't think that's embarrassing. I think that's pretty fucking awesome, actually.
It's pretty cool. But it's just a funny anecdote of how much the Turtles have influenced my life over the years.
Yeah, shit, man. Obviously, it's been a big role. Yeah, cool. Well, we're 2 40-something-year-old men, and we're wearing t-shirts with cartoon characters on them, and we love y'all. And we'll talk to you.